All right, thank you everybody for your patience. It is Thursday, February 27th, 2025. The Planning Board is now called to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. Dr. Benoit? Here. Dr. Roberts?
Here.
And the Vice Chair is here. Let's see, item 3, minutes will be at the next meeting. Any disclosure planning board members shall need to disclose this evening? Conflicts of interest? Disclosure and notice any ex parte communications? Because we have such a heavy agenda this evening. All right, then on to item number 7, substandard lots zoning, amendment to the North Smithfield zoning ordinance. Mr. Krula, I'll turn it over to you for a brief introduction.
Mr. Chairman, as you know, we're in the process of updating our zoning regulations to comply with the Rhode Island general law. Last year, the General Assembly passed several amendments to the land use regulations, subdivision, and zoning regulations. We're here tonight with our consultant from Innes Associates to go over the non-conforming section of the zoning code.
All right, very good.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me here. Tonight, we just have one tiny thing on the agenda, which is the substandard lots of record. I'm going to start with giving up the highlights of what has actually changed and how it impacts, and then we can open up for Q&A. If I missed anything, I'm sure Mark will cover. So these adjustments to the non-conforming lots are designed to make it more feasible for the owners of properties of lots which are non-conforming to make the property actually usable and developable, and it also addresses the challenges posed by these lots. So few of the changes that they did, the state did, was that if your lot is non-conforming in your zoning district, you can use the dimensional requirements of another zoning district in which your lot size would be conforming. If that doesn't work, then the setback, lot frontage, lot width shall be reduced by the same proportion that the area in which the substandard lot meets the minimum lot area. So, for example, if the lot area only meets 40% of the dimensions, then the required setbacks are reduced by 40%. The third option to make it conforming and usable is that if the lot coverage is inversely proportional to how much you're non-conforming by. So if your lot area only meets 40% of the minimum lot area, you can actually have a building coverage of 60%. So that if you have a smaller lot, then it gives you more space to actually develop on it. And then if all of these three doesn't work in making your lot conforming and usable, then you have to apply for a modification or dimensional variance to go forward with any construction. One of the other things that changed is the merger exemption. So just because you have a non-conforming lot, you are not required to merge with a smaller property that you have, abutting smaller property that you have. If they are equal or greater than the area of 50% of the lots within 200 feet of the subject lot, you are not required to merge. And so it needs to be confirmed by the zoning enforcement officer, but also you need a plan certified by an engineer or the registered land surveyor, and that once that's certified, then this condition applies. Did I miss anything, Mark?
No, I think that's, Supriya, you touched very nicely on the state-mandated updates to the non-conforming section. If you look at the document that you received, however, planning staff along with Supriya went through the whole section and tried to clean up some of the superfluous language, some repetitive language, and tried to structure the section so it's more concise and more readable. For example, several sections had what constituted abandonment of uses in each section. So we took that out of the 3 sections and moved it to the back as a general abandonment of a non-conforming use that would cover everything preceding to it. The same thing about uses under special use permits. So if you go through and you look at the strikeout language, we've eliminated a substantial amount of language to make it, more concise and to basically address those areas that are required under the statute. It appeared that there was some language in there that might have been, let's say, reactionary to some issues that may have happened in the past that were actually inappropriate with regard to zoning. So those are being recommended to be removed. One of them is this non-conforming status applies to structures and premises in combination with voluntary removal of destruction. I don't know why that's in there. It doesn't necessarily need to be in there. There are requirements by law and by statute that talks about destruction. If it's involuntary, your property is grandfathered. If it's voluntary, it is not grandfathered. So that language was superfluous. The other thing that we added that wasn't required by statute that Supriya touched on was the requirement that an engineer or a surveyor provide an analysis for the unmerging of lots. Because of the limitations of staff and in the building department, we thought it would be better to have a professional review the record cards and deeds and provide that information and evidence to the building official in support of an applicant's request to unmerge a lot. And so basically, as Supriya mentioned, what the statute says is if you have abutting non-conforming merged lots and you do an analysis of the area, if 50% of the lots in that area historically are equal to or less than what your lots are, you're allowed to unmerge your lots, which means in some areas, lots that were not buildable are going to become buildable. And that's throughout the state. And that's one of the changes that the General Assembly made to allow more housing to be developed in communities.
So I guess I have a couple of questions about the setbacks. When you're saying that, for the 40% reduction, we'll continue using that. So say a side yard setback is like, we'll say 10 feet. So that side yard setback can now go to 4 feet?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
The one that, yeah, so it's a proportionate
Yeah.
reduction, I guess. The one that really struck me, and I think the General Assembly went back and changed it to say, if you have another zone that your lot is conforming in, you can use that, because they only had that provision in there. And if you look at certain lots, there could be a situation where the relief that is automatic is so extreme, your house could be right on the, 5 feet from the street, you wouldn't even be able to park a car in your yard.
Right.
But that's the way it's written. And that's what we need to abide by.
Okay. Because my other thought, because I know the fire chief's here, is if we're shrinking up frontage, and that's going to cause issues as well.
Well, separate, like if you had two abutting non-conforming lots in an extreme situation, to use your example,
Right.
and those houses were 4 feet from each property line, that's a fire code and a building code issue where they would probably have to have, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in fire code nor building code, and I'm not asking the chief to participate in this, but the walls might have to be fire rated because of the distance between the structures.
They would be.
Yeah, so that would increase cost of construction for those homes, but
Yeah. Okay. Go right ahead, Dr. Bedard.
I have a question for either the planner or this lady. Can a present non-conforming lot be expanded if the owner could acquire adjacent property?
Yes.
Does this preclude an expansion of a non-conforming lot?
no, yeah,
You could still add land to it to make it more or
You
less
may add,
non-conforming?
so previously, a lot of zoning ordinances read, abutting non-conforming lots are merged to conform or more nearly conform, and that's what you're talking about, Dr. Benoit, is more nearly conforming. And yes, you are allowed, you know, if you had a situation and your neighbor had residual land and you needed more land, it would be an administrative subdivision where you would be shifting the lot lines and taking some area from an abutting lot and adding it to your lot to make it more conforming and more reasonable to build on, I guess.
Thank you.
Mr. Carullo, you talked about how this might mean that we'll see increased cases of unmerged lots and more building on what would previously be unbuildable. I was curious if there were any other kind of like practical changes that we're going to anticipate seeing in the town because of this. Anything else that stands out, like to anticipate coming down the pike?
Well, this combined with some of the other provisions that we've done earlier, like adaptive reuse. So the intent of the General Assembly is to increase housing. And by increasing housing, you automatically increase density. And, you know, some of the issues that are related to that, especially in the town of North Smithfield, is utilities and services. And the town has very limited public water and public sewer. And over time, the reduction of these lot sizes and the ability for individuals to construct on smaller lots, you know, could have effects environmentally. I don't know that they will or they won't. One of the things that, you know, I talked with Councilman Osier about when we were doing the groundwater supply overlay district is, you know, the town's very concerned about its aquifer, right? And probably one of the greatest contributors to pollutants in your aquifer is your septic system. So, you know, a proliferation of lots in certain areas on smaller lots, it would probably take a lot, but potentially it could have the effect of affecting the groundwater long term. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it stands to reason that the more septic systems that you have in an area on smaller lots, the more effect you're going to have.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yes, if you would please. And if you could just say your name and your address.
Sure.
Thank you.
My name is Darlene Machado, 52 Douglas Pike in North Smithfield. I just had a question about the non-conformance, and is this only applying to substandard lots of record, or is it also non-conformance in use?
This section is for what we're talking about this evening
Yeah.
is not substandard lots of record. There are sections in here about non-conforming uses. I don't know if you have a copy of this, but we can give you a copy of it if
Sure.
you'd like.
Yep.
But basically what it says with regard to non-conforming uses is if you have a pre-existing non-conforming use,
Yeah.
it can continue in its current state but cannot be expanded unless it goes to the zoning board and
Okay, so-
has relief for expansion.
So when it comes to the merger, there would no longer be an automatic merger.
There is still a provision for merger, so lots would be merged unless the lot sizes within the 200-foot radius of the lot were equal to or greater than the merged lot. So if the lots were required to be 10,000 square feet, I'm just using that for an example,
Yeah.
and the area traditionally was platted in the 1800s with 5,000 square foot lots.
Yeah.
Today, all those 5,000s would be merged into 10,000, they'd be doubled up for 10,000 square foot lots. What this ordinance is doing is if the lot's not developed, let's say the house was on one side and you had an adjoining lot at 5,000, you looked at the plat, they would be unmerged and they'd go back to their initial 5,000. Does that make sense?
Yeah, they're usually using this to decouple.
Yes.
But what I was speaking to was, like, if they had a non-conforming use in, like, if they were introducing, like, the overlay.
Yeah, so I don't want to confuse non-conforming uses with non-conforming lots. They're
Right.
two separate and distinct
Okay.
items, and that, I think I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about, but
yeah.
with regard to a non-conforming use, as I said, non-conforming uses are allowed to continue in their current state.
Yeah.
I think the item that you're referring to is kind of a different aspect of a non-conforming use, because it's
Yeah.
a use related to land with regard to the land being the use, and that is mining, right? Is that I think that's what you're
Yeah,
referring to.
like, that was
Yeah,
created,
so
like,
like,
with
yeah,
this joining
so-
issue or merger.
So if you
issue.
had let's say you had a gas station,
Yeah.
and the town rezoned the area, and we created a non-conformity of the gas station had 3 pumps, and it was so big. Someone could not expand that building or expand the pumps because it would be a non-conforming use, and it would be basically allowed to continue in its current state in perpetuity until it changes to a conforming use, or if they would have to go to the zoning board and get authorization to expand the non-conforming use. With regard to what you're talking about, mining, the actual use is the land, and they're extracting minerals, or they're extracting product from the land. So the land in general, as it exists, is the use. So I don't want to get into too much detail on that technicality.
Yeah. I was just, interested in, I know,
Yeah.
like, a little bit about the, the smaller lots and using them
Right.
in, uncoupling them, but I was, I was trying to see what was the merger going on, or the, no merger going on with what you were voting on.
This is primarily related to residential land use,
Yeah.
the uncoupling of lots. I think if you look in the zoning code, most of the commercial uses don't have minimum lot sizes. They have setbacks. And the setback from the use basically prescribes how big the lot has to be.
Yeah, the
So-
road frontage and all of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
Okay,
the different,
all right,
okay?
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dr. Benoit?
If no one else wants to be heard, I'll make a motion to send a favorable recommendation to the town council to adopt the zoning ordinance as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Roll call vote.
Yes.
Dr. Benoit, Dr. Roberts?
Yes.
Mr. Ogier?
Yes.
And the vice chair votes yes. Thank you very much. So next item on the agenda for this evening is review of capital improvement program budget requests. So this is our yearly or annual review of every department's requests. I'm glad to see we have also a member of the budget committee here. And thank you to the department heads that are in attendance. So we're going to start with those that are in attendance this evening. So CJ, if you want to scroll, you guys want to rocks, paper, scissors, go who has the lowest amount first. All right.
Good evening. I guess I'll start out. Does anyone have any questions up front before I get started, or if you had a time to look? Okay, I'm sorry. Dave Chartier, Fire Chief. So as you'll see, for the fiscal 25-26, we're sticking with our protective clothing replacement program in purchasing six new sets at $32,200. We also are requesting funding, potential funding for new gas meters for the trucks. I I will say that we do have a grant in for those. I'm hoping to hear about that sometime within the next couple of months. We are in need of replacement of 4 mobile radios. We were notified by the Rhode Island Emergency Management Agency that these 4 types of radios are being taken offline, so they won't be compatible with their system anymore. So we plan on replacing 2 at a time. So 2 are up for this year, and then 2 are up for replacement in 27, 28. Just to hop back to the protective clothing, we built out the program to be budgeted for 24,000, 24,500, and so on, right up until 2030. That's a moving target. Protective clothing is constantly increasing. They're averaging about a 5 to 6% increase every year. And sticking with radios along the same line, the portable radios, like the mobile radios, we have 4 of those. Those are coming off the REMA system. So we're also replacing 4 of those, 2 this year, and then 2 in 28, 29. We're in need of a dispatch console upgrade, but we budgeted for that in 26, 27 for $50,000. And then we also need to, there's a lot of changes coming with computer-aided dispatch and things of that nature. So we're budgeting for that for also in 26, 27 for $65,000. I have in here for $45,000 for a computer server upgrade. We did receive a grant, a cybersecurity grant through FEMA and Rhode Island Emergency Management, but that came, we got notified on that after the budget was submitted. So that is a 100% reimbursable grant that once we get that project done, we should get that money back. And then everything after that is budgeted through the third-party rescue billing. That's money that's been being put aside for the replacement of rescues and fire trucks as well. So that's the fire department's capital layout for the next several years.
Any members of the board have any questions for the chief?
I have one quick question. I'm just curious how this works. Were you saying that the computer server upgrade is reimbursable by a grant? Was
Yes.
that the one? So I'm just curious how it works. Where does that money then go? Does it get put into another fiscal year?
Well, I'm not sure we'll have to include this. Like I said, I put this in before we were
I
notified
got
that we
it.
got the grant.
Okay,
So-
so if you get the grant, or if you're saying you did get the grant, you take it out? It would be
Correct.
taken out, okay. I wasn't sure if it would stay in and then get moved to
Well, I think it
another-
would need to still be budgeted because we'll have to pay for it up front, and then it would come back to the town
Okay.
in a reimbursement.
Thank you.
Yeah, Cynthia, there'll be an expense and then the revenue, just like you guys did with the generators and stuff like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I am glad that you clarified what the CAD software is, because in architecture, it's computer-aided drafting, so I was wondering why. I didn't know if your fire marshal needed additional drafting
Yeah,
things to
no.
do his job.
Not at all.
So thank you for that clarification. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Chief.
Good, okay. Have a great night.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Who's next on that list, CJ? You got Heritage Association? Okay. We can still do rocks, paper, scissors. I'm fine with that, if you guys want to do it.
Good evening. Rich Keene, 7 Bamford Street, and I'm the president of the North Smithfield Heritage Association. And we should be even quicker. I should have brought my glasses. But basically, what we've been doing is, these last few years, is restoring the Memorial Town Building. And we're at a point where we've replaced the windows in the back of the building, partly by necessity because of a car fire that destroyed one of them. But anyway, we've got the back of the building done now on the second floor, and we're moving our way towards the front of the building. And we've got about $160,000 worth of windows overall eventually in that building. But the most critical ones right now are the arched windows in the what was the main hall, and what we've restored basically as the main hall. So they're pretty much the same type of windows that you have here, the arched windows. That $10,000 a piece. It's a big chunk. We have applied. We applied last year for a grant, and we didn't get money for windows, but we did get money for $25,000 to rewire the electrical systems upstairs for lighting and receptacles. So, and part of the reason, not only are the windows they're old metal. I don't know when they were put in, but they don't function very well. They also are not energy efficient, and most importantly, they don't have UV protection. And what we want to do with a large part of that main hall is put a museum up there, and those artifacts and relics can't be exposed to sunlight. So that's going to be an important aspect of the window replacement. So we've built out over time. We're very patient. If we can get money from the town on a regular schedule, that'd be great. But if we get the money through grants, then we wouldn't have to carry the program out or stretch it out. So we're always trying to get money from the.
Mr. Keene, how many windows are on the second floor? There are 8 or 10?
There are 6 of the arch type.
Okay.
Those are which is really our highest priority right now. And then other than that, there's 8 on each side. On
the second floor.
Not counting the arch windows.
The 6 plus 8 is the whole second
Okay.
floor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Beth.
All right. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Keene? Okay. Mr. Keene, is North Smithfield Heritage Association eligible through Rhode Island Energy for improvements that way?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Actually, they helped us with the next door a few years ago.
Okay.
We've been trying for almost 2 years now to get somebody to get them to come out and take a look at our building, and they answer the phone right away. But then the person that does the scheduling, it's been over a year and a half, and
Okay.
they don't get back to us. So they must be busy.
Mm. Okay. If there's no other questions for Mr. Keene, then thank you very much, Mr. Keene.
Thank you so much.
Okay. CJ, if you want to continue scrolling down to I believe the school department's next.
This is the school department asked me to hand this out because
Okay.
it's on the sheet, but this
Mhm.
is laid out slightly differently.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We're all on the same page.
Good evening, Alan Seepy, excuse me, Facilities Director, School Department.
Alan, do you have your sheet?
Oh, no, I don't.
Give this up now,
Sure.
so you guys are on the same, you're on the same sheet.
Looking for $200,000 goes into the revolving account for Warm Safe Dry projects that are reimbursable by the state, roofing, HVAC, so on and so forth. Any questions?
Not on that line item. Then you got a few other line items through here?
Yes.
Okay. So do you want, I was just gonna let you go through all these items that have been outlined here.
Well, the roofing, we're just in the process now of getting hard budgets for the roofs. They're in the planning stages right now. Over the summer, we've got a company coming in to do some inspections on the roof, cut into the roof, see if I need new insulation, see if they're wet, dry, so on and so forth, how much life is left in the rubber. Like the high school, we're probably looking at 2 to 3, 4 more years out of that roof. The middle school, which we know is it's about 18 years old, 17 years old right now, we're gonna do a test on that roof to see how long that would last before we go ahead and do these projects.
Okay.
And I'll have the elementary school done by same thing over the summer, checking the shingles on the elementary school.
Okay.
We've had some work done at the middle school to put air conditioning in. These are hard numbers for the air conditioning at the elementary school, I mean at the middle school. And that's about it.
Okay.
So most of these are in the planning stage. We still need to find out the exact number for it, then go through the RIDE process, put an application in, get approval. Once we do receive the funding for the whole project, and then get the project started. So these are a few years away.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions from the board here? Okay. So, Mr. CP, I just want to make sure, because in the Excel file that we have,
Yeah.
I saw that there was the NSES parking lot widening and resurfacing, and also the athletic complex parking and expansion.
Right.
Those costs are just estimated project costs, or are they just estimated construction costs at this
The
point?
elementary school is an estimated cost. We did put out a bid for the expansion at the complex. That's in front of the environmental department at the state
Okay.
to figure out, because of the the situation over there. And that's right now, that's where that is at. But we have a hard number on that one.
Okay. All right. If nobody has any other questions?
Just
Yeah.
clarify, if you will, with RIDE reimbursement, is
Yep.
that 100%,
No, it's about 35%.
50%?
That's 35. And it goes up depending on the type of project you do. The more green it is, the higher the rate you get.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we've done several projects with RIDE, the windows at the high school, science rooms, the addition to the elementary school. We've done a lot of work through RIDE with that.
Okay. Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good night.
All right, CJ, if you want to scroll down to North Smithfield Little League.
Jeff Harris, Vice President of North Smithfield Little League.
Good evening. My name is Eric Johnson, President of North Smithfield Little League.
So we'll try to make this quick. Does anybody have any questions? You do have questions. You're wondering what we're... So first thing I'd like to say is generally we're under the guidance of the Department of Public Works or Parks and Recreation, if you want to call it that. But we are our own separate entity, right? North Smithfield Little League is a chartered Little League and a nonprofit. We're our own nonprofit organization, so we fundraise and et cetera to. But we mainly, our main home and the people who mainly use Pacheco Park or Kelly Field Complex, that's a debatable thing we can talk about if you want to, but since we're the main users of those facilities, generally there's a general fund that Department of Public Works puts in, but as part of our mission, and this is part of our being a chartered Little League, is we have to really maintain the health, safety, and welfare of the fields. We do a review every season, at the beginning of the season or the end of the year, to make sure that The fences are in good shape. The fields are playable. The kids can't get hurt on certain things. So we do our own assessment, and we share that with Ray Pendergast and the Department of Public Works and his field crew that works there. And so we make recommendations to them about what we see needs and could be done to help that. And some of these things are costly. So last year, we worked with Ray to free up some monies, about 10,000, I think we ended up, to do some repairs to one of the fields at Pacheco, and some fence repairs. I think that was basically all. And so what we do is we do similar things that a lot of the other nonprofits do. We leverage that money for grants. So we've been successful at getting one grant that's a $5,000 grant, and you have to show that you have this funding that you can use. Like I said, we've been pretty successful at fundraising, but there's a lot of costs that we have to absorb, uniforms and just all the other stuff that goes with running this establishment. So what we did get approved for this coming fiscal was another 10,000 was approved for the budget. So we're going to use that money as leverage, and that's mainly the numbers that you're seeing there. There's a 36,797 price tag that's there, but that's mainly because some of the estimates we have, some of them were from last year, but we're working with the numbers. It's not just really the field, so we have the concession stands, we have 2 press boxes. We do a lot of volunteer work to keep those in good shape. Outside of what the town does, we've repaired those press boxes. They're in really good shape right now. Last season, we did a really great job. We have a gentleman who volunteers. Sorry. So a lot of those things that need repairs and upkeep, we try to take care of ourselves. So we're not really leaning heavy. We need some help. And so we're trying to use the funds that we have and we get to make what we can happen year to year. So these funds here are for upkeep of the field, 2 of the fields, and some repairs to the fencing. Some of the fencing is falling apart. We did some last year. This is like phase 2, we called it, because we had to split it into phases. We didn't have the funding to do it all in one year, so we kind of split it into, like most of us do. We don't have the funds. We will split a building project, et cetera, into phases. So this is essentially phase 2 for some of this, and some of it is just more upkeep. And that's pretty much what we're doing. And going into the future, yes, we have some larger numbers in the future. One of the things that I've been championing for, because I manage the older boys, which is a junior-senior division, and in this town, there is one large-sized baseball field. I'm really, really heavily advocating to make that another one in this town. And I know everybody is spending money on athletics. I'm not asking for that total there. We're looking at all ways we can do to fund to try to make that happen. But it's a big ticket. And the school has been very, I don't know, I'm not going to say the word that I really want to say, but it hasn't been a good relationship over the past few years to use the varsity field. And it's understandable in a way, but it's always been the case in years past. We have always shared use of the field. We have always had a good relationship. But over the past 5 years, that has really not been the case. And so I would really like to have another varsity-sized field in this town. And you go to other towns, and they have like 2, 3, 4 of them. And I know that we're looking at where the space could be, and that's another whole discussion. But that explains really what we're looking for, funding for next year. Any questions?
I'd like to know how many kids participate in Little League, and I'd like to know if girls softball was part of your program or a separate entity, if it still exists.
Yeah.
Sure. So on average, we service between 200 to 250 children a year. throughout ages 4 through 15. Little League, when I became a board member of North Smithfield Little League, little girls softball was part of the Little League umbrella. The director of the softball at that time had requested to separate and become their own entity, become their own division, and the board approved that separation. So though we are two separate entities, we still share space, we still collaborate and work together. Softball is under USA Softball, which does not fall under Little League. So we don't count those girls in our numbers, just because as a Little League standpoint, we get chartered and we need to be insured for every player that comes under our safety net, if you will. But on the baseball side, anywhere between, like I said, 200 and 250 children.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just have a recommendation. Have you looked into the Champlin Foundation for?
I don't think Champlin really funds stuff like that,
Oh,
like
okay.
building a field or
I know
something
they
like that.
did,
We've looked at,
they did a-
Little League in general,
Mhm.
but because of, we're supposedly one of the more affluent type of communities,
Mm.
they really look at those who are in real need, shall we say. Even though I feel like some of the days I feel like we're in real need, but it's frustrating at times because I've got a lot of kids who want to play and we're looking for places to play and we have to go lean on other towns and we have to rent their fields and that's costing us more, so.
I want to take a moment just to recognize your efforts for the town and the Little League. My son, who Eric coached this past fall ball, it's his favorite sport right now. Baseball, he's going through the Little League clinic, and I'm thrilled that you guys are providing that. So I also want to give props to Coach Eric, because we also won the fall ball championship for Northern Rhode Island.
We did.
So, that the group of boys was so enthusiastic throughout the entire fall season, and it was just so great to see the joy on their faces. And then that last game, that win, that was amazing. So, I'm speaking from my personal benefit. I know our chairman, Mr. Pilardi, was also a big advocate for the Little League. His son is very much into baseball, and he's in his college years going and doing baseball. So I just want to thank you guys for those efforts. So, and certainly recognize that these numbers certainly come at a cost for the town, but they also are benefiting that 200 to 250 boys under the Little League, and also the girls over at the softball league. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jeff, I have a question, if it's okay. So if we know that we may, well, if you're anticipating, I should rephrase, if you're anticipating to have to potentially build a new field at some point, wouldn't it make sense to maybe start incrementally budgeting that now? In case you do come across a grant opportunity, at least there could be some money reserved for that opportunity. And then my other question is why is the issue with the school and sharing more due to wear and tear? And is there some allotment of money that can be used to offset some of that wear and tear maintenance costs, even if it's bringing somebody in to help treat and repair? Just curious.
So,
You don't need to get into details, just
yeah, back to your
trying to
first
determine.
question, I guess, is, what was the first question again?
The budgeting for the new field.
Yeah,
Like I said, doing 150 in the second
We
year.
are actively doing it. I mean, this year was, so far, with sponsorships we've gotten, it's been really good. We're taking some of that funding. Obviously, we have to do some maintenance
Right.
to keep up the fields. So the reason why we're sort of in this budget section here is because we're our own separate entity, and Ray has his budget to do, the Parks and Rec Department to do their field work that they do all the time
Right.
during our play season. because we play spring all the way through the end of fall to the end of October sometimes into early November. So their funds are budgeted through there, but from our recommendations and the way we've put together with them to talk about how certain things, like in the concession stand, we need this, we need that, we need this. So we meet with Ray, and we've gone over, I can take care of that, I can take care of that. So he works with us to take care of some of the things that we see on our list that needs to get done to help keep maintenance of the site, the
Yep.
buildings and the field. And yes, we're taking some of our funding that we've gotten so far, and we're moving that into certain segments of, this is what we want to save for this, and this is what we want to save for that. And we looked at, we just met last night, and we approved our own board to spend up to, not to exceed 10,000 that, of what we're putting in beyond what we're getting from the town, and then maybe extra if we have some funds left over. But whatever we have from this year is going into a fund pot to, this is what we want to do, X, Y, and Z, and sort of disperse it that way. So yes, on a budget note, yes. For the school, I can only speak for myself personally. I'm out there, I'm an active participant. I manage these kids, I coach these kids. We're doing a winter clinic right now with the little kids. Actually all ages except for the older boys. And I personally take it upon myself to take care of the fields. So if there's an issue with maintenance of taking care of the varsity fields, because I know they just redid them. We weren't able to use them last season. We weren't able to use them in the fall because they were going to be doing more work on it because they didn't finish the construction of the field. This is what I was told. They weren't finished with construction that they did earlier, which they started later the year before, and never finished it properly. There's still some drainage issues. The grass in the outfield was dying. So he told us that a construction company was coming in, and we weren't gonna be able to use the field at all for the fall. So that's why we had to scramble and rush to do other things. I'm out there raking the fields myself. We're very good stewards of taking care of these fields, and it's been one of my big points that I bring up to all of the board and every coach, is that grab a rake, clean the field, don't leave this all in the DPW's hands or Parks and Rec, because they're understaffed too, and we understand that, and so we formed a great relationship with them and that's been over the past 3 years.
Yep.
Before that, there was a lot of knocking heads and blaming it all on Parks and Rec, and I don't believe that's the way that it has to go. So we've been advocating heavily to have everybody pitch in, do your fair share, and clean the fields when you finish a game, when you finish your practice. The Parks and Rec department comes in and they'll make the field look beautiful and line it for games for us, and that relationship is working perfectly.
Yeah, I was just curious if there was like a funding thing that could help out in some of
They
that.
do, the school has its own funding,
Yeah,
application that they do, and as local, like we're within the community, there's certain guidelines that they give for those, for nonprofits or for-profit. They have their own funding that they have to apply for. If there's some way that we need to help with that, we could look at that, but
no, I
mainly
wasn't
it's a
saying necessarily you
minimal
guys. I was
cost.
thinking, I was thinking more the town, but okay, that's helpful.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, do you have any input from Mr. Pendergast or the chief of police?
Well, the chief's still upstairs with the budget committee.
Oh, he's getting grilled another way. Okay.
He's upstairs defending his budget.
Okay.
So he was going to try to make it, but
All right.
apparently he's not going to make it. As far as DPW, I think it's pretty much what they submitted last year, except there are 2 additional
Yep.
items on here. Well, there's a couple of, Pacheco Park entrance, I'm not sure was on there last year, and Scouters Hall repair renovation. I think those numbers from Scouters Hall came out of the report done by BH&A.
I was hoping Ray was going to be here because I had some questions for him.
Yeah, and the Pacheco Park entrance is an estimate based on
The
the old
2007
Casale design.
from 2017.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the date of it,
I am.
and I'm not sure that that was the number. I think it was like 245 in that report. Could have been 290, I'm not really sure.
I believe it was back in 2017, because I remember asking Ray about that a while back ago. So, why don't we take the police department? Does the board have any questions about police? Or any comments that we want to reflect to, when we send this over to the Asset Management Commission? Okay, hearing none. So, DPW, is there any questions or comments about the DPW? Okay,
It's more of a comment than a question about the $500,000 twice in the, this year and next year for the renovations to Scouters Hall. It's the same kind of question I had as for the folks from Little League. Is just curious whether there's any grant opportunities, because obviously that's a significant amount of money, and there are times when such grants are available.
yeah.
So the town is in the process currently of writing a community development block grant application for $500,000 for Scouters. The state just opened, or is in the process of opening, their large grant program under CDBG. And I believe the town will be applying for 2 grants. One is the $500,000 for renovations at Scouters, and the other is $500,000 for
Hallowell.
utility connections and access improvements to Hallowell.
Yep. Yeah, because I was going to ask about that, because I know BH&A's report was, for just repairs of Scouters, was at $2.17 million. So even if we're budgeting $500,000 this year and $500,000 next year, we're not figuring in any escalation. We're not figuring, if there's going to be grants that cover the remaining, $1.7 million. $1.17 million to kind of close that gap, but also with the escalation of construction and a lot of unknown things with tariffs and everything popping up, that certainly puts that $2.17 million in question. So,
Jeff, are you saying that the repairs to the building are 2.17?
that's what the report from BH+A states.
You could build that building for 2.17 twice.
Well, I'm just saying.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm just going off of the numbers that were reported on, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a similar just concern that just seems like so much money for such a basic and small building. And of course, I know I attended a bunch of meetings related to Hallowell and Scouters Hall, but it seems like a huge investment in something that might be better to not. It's just a lot of money for repairs and renovations for such a simple building.
Renovations and buildings and construction is not what it used to be pre-pandemic.
I think that the major repair is foundational repair. There's
Yeah.
the floor shifted,
it's in-
foundation's cracked.
I was just over there
That
on
would be a
Sunday.
substantial
It's-
repair.
It's in rough shape. So I just want to make sure that we're bridging the gap in some way, shape, or form. The other one that I was concerned about is that enough money for the Pacheco Park entrance at the $290,000, because that's based off of an earlier number, so I'm concerned that escalation wasn't figured based off that initial report.
I don't want to speak for the DPW director, but I think the $290,000 is like cash money, and as far as the construction, I think he's intending to do that in-house.
Okay.
With town equipment, personnel, and maybe even some materials. So
Okay.
I think
Because I'm going to assume that there's some drainage that needs to get engineered for
I-
that whole area.
You know, I don't know to the degree, I don't think to the degree that that new access, and there were two options, as I recall. I'm not sure to the extent of what is being proposed here, if that's not just a separate
Just a s-
driveway in.
Okay,
That's my assumption.
okay.
Maybe a separate driveway with curbing into the existing parking lot,
Yep, 'cause I-
rather than the redesign with additional parking.
Right, I know the Joe Casali Engineering had more parking, which I know we need. So, okay. And then my only other comment is a standing comment that I've had since I've been on the board, is I want to see some money budgeted for a building assessment study, and it gets axed every time. And so I would like to recommend that we add $30,000 to the DPW budget, so that they, whether it be Mr. Pendergast overseeing it or the Asset Management Commission overseeing it, they get some professional services so that we can properly have a building assessment of all the town-owned buildings, and then we can start planning for building maintenance. So I'd like to add that to the budget for $30,000. And then I'd also like to start adding for a continual, for the next 6 years, just starting to budget aside building maintenance money for whenever we have a leaky roof like the high school just had this past week. And, or, you know, a piece of equipment that fails here at Kendall Dean that we need to address unexpectedly, and that can just be a recurring $25,000 a year, fiscal year, just so then that way we're not caught. And, you know, I can if we had a building assessment plan, we would know how much we need to plan out. But for the time being, I think we need to start allocating that, because we need to take care of our buildings.
Jeff, are you suggesting a cumulative account at $25,000 a year?
Yeah, for the
Because
next, because I know ours go out everybody plans out for the next 6 years.
Right.
So 25,000 each year for building maintenance.
But a cumulative, so if I don't spend the 25,000,
Right.
you want that retained, and then it would go to 50, 7,500.
Yep.
Okay, because I was gonna say, if it was 25,000 a year and it wasn't cumulative, that would be more appropriate for their operating budget, but that's not, okay, I just wanted to understand.
Right. No, I think we need to start planning for when we have, it's not an if it's going to happen, it's a when it's going to happen situation. So I just want to make sure we're prepared for it. And, you know, like I said, I'm glad Mr. Roger is here from the Budget Committee, because I've been making this statement for the past however many years I've been on this board, and it just seems to get lost. So I want to make sure it's not, I'm going to keep banging that drum until somebody hears it, so. I'll get off my soapbox now. Are there any other questions or comments?
I just had a question. It was more about Scouters. Well, first, I echo everything you just said about planning for maintenance and long-term planning in that regard and getting a fund study. But my other question with the Pacheco Park and Scouters is, it's only 2 years at $500,000. What happens after that? So you have $1 million you just invested, and there's no long-term capital plan to keep up with maintenance. I know there could be a separate one,
That could
but
fall under that 25,000.
shouldn't there be some for specific buildings too, just in case? Or
Well, I think once you get that building assessment report, then you'll know Kendall Dean needs X amount this year. Scouters needs X amount the following year, you know, because there'll be 25-year plans for mechanical systems, electrical systems, roofing, all those components. So we'll at least be able to start the clock on some of these newer systems and really start to understand, okay, like Mr. Seepy was just saying that the high school roof, or the middle school roof is coming up on 17 years. They usually have a 20 to 25-year lifespan, so we can start to identify all that.
and I think more importantly than that makes sense. I think more importantly then it's going to be a facilities manager or some type of personnel to help assist the Asset Management Commission,
Yeah.
or whoever's in charge or leading that charge. I said, because, we want to make sure that money's being spent wisely and appropriately.
Okay. So those were my only two amendments to the budget, to the recommend to the Asset Management Commission. Are there any other further comments?
Is that feedback from the speaker system?
What was it?
Is that the HVAC?
See, we need to budget some money
Proof and
now.
point right there.
I guess, Mark, before we close this out, did the planning department, building zoning department, town clerk's office have any further capital that they needed to look at? I know
No,
it
so
was-
building clerks, other departments declined, EMA declined.
Okay.
I mean, the only other thing that I would add in here, and I know we have grant money for it, if you were inclined to add something, would be the multi-generational center. It's not, seems like a glaring omission here.
You know,
A little bit.
I have a bit of a conflict. Is that a conflict of interest if I recommend a
No, I
dollar
don't-
amount?
I'll
No.
recommend it.
Okay. So, what, I would put it right on par with Scouters Hall and have another $500,000 there.
Yep.
And then that way, similar to how Mr. Harris explained, and Mr. Keene explained, using some of that money to budget, to leverage for additional grants, there's a potential to do the same.
It's actually money right now, though. Like, weren't you alluding to the grant that we have? Is that part of what should be acknowledged in here, too?
So, what I would normally suggest is that whatever year we believe we're commencing construction, right,
This year.
that the amount of money, the 4 million be appropriate, even though it's grant money, it should be included in here, as well as any additional, you're suggesting an additional 500,000, that should probably be in there, so I can,
So add in the $4
So I
million
can amend
grant,
this.
the $1 million grant, and
yeah.
another 500.
I mean, the $1 million grant should also be
Yep.
in here, whether it be under DPW, well, DPW's Parks and Rec, so I would say under Little League, but, and Jeff, so, just so that you know, when you amend this, I put the planning department amendments in red, so they understand that they're amendments and they've been added, and that's the way that gets forwarded, just
Perfect.
for your information.
Nope, thank you for that clarification. All right, then. I'll make a motion that we recommend the capital budget as amended to the Asset Management Commission. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay. That wraps up that. No administrative subdivisions this evening, so last item on the agenda. We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.